We need to talk about something gamers have been asking for quite a while. Has Sony lost its way with a PlayStation? That question came up again after a recent episode of Pachter with Michael Pachter. I'll explain what he said, what I agree with, what I don't, and what it means for fans and for the PlayStation as a business. So Michael Pachter is one of those industry names that often gets loud headlines. Sometimes he says things that sound extreme, and those lines get shared widely. That can make people assume he's always wrong. And that's just unfair. He's got a long track record and often makes reasonable points, but he also misses facts sometimes that just jumps into conclusions. One clear mistake from the episode, he said that Jade Raymond was fired and that her game Fair Games was cancelled. Fair Games is not cancelled, and Jade Raymond's situation isn't clear. She may have left on her own choice, or maybe the studio missed milestones and leaderships changed. We just do not know for sure, until someone directly involved explains it. All of this is just a rumor. Pachter also just suggests that PlayStation's problems began when Andrew House and Sean Layden left. That's worth unpacking. Sean Layden's exit had kind of an odd sign afterward. He liked tweets critical of PlayStation and advising Tencent now. That suggests his exit might not have been smooth. Andrew House worked at Sony for over 25 years and left to do other things. That's common for a long-time executives. What matters more than the fact of leaving is timing. Big leadership changes around major product launches can create turbulence. So yes, those departures could have played a role, but saying the company lost its way only because people left is just too simple. Companies change leaderships all the time. How they adapt matters more than the departure themselves. The biggest part of the Pacher's point was about the live service and mobile. He questioned Sony buying Bungie for billions instead of buying a big mobile company. That's a fair debate. Bungie brought experience in online persistent games, and Sony paid a lot for that. In hindsight, the Bungie move didn't go exactly as expected. Bungie didn't remain fully independent, and the outcome, well, it has been messy. Mobile publishers like Zynga or maybe Niantic have different strengths: scale, mobile expertise, and established live service models. If Sony wanted instant reach in mobile, buying a mobile-first company might have been smarter. Instead, Sony started PlayStation Studio Mobile and tried to build from scratch. That effort has had leadership turnover and some studio closures, so you can see why people question the strategy. But there are two separate things here: what is best for Sony as a business, and what fans want from PlayStation. On the business side, Sony is doing very well. PlayStation has made solid operating income recently. PlayStation 5 sales are as close to the PS4's on launch-to-launch basis, which is impressive considering the difference between the two generations. PlayStation 5 owners spend a lot on the PlayStation Store through microtransactions, seasonal passes, and third-party releases. Financially, Sony is succeeding. And for long-time fans, however, financial success doesn't erase the disappointment. Many fans remember PlayStation for bold single-player games, creative smaller titles, and strong first-party identity. Lately, development cycle has grown longer, first-party output feels thinner, and Sony has pushed into live service and multi-platform deals. That leaves some fans feeling that PlayStation isn't the same company that they loved. That feeling is real and is quite understandable. Part of the shift is how smaller, experimental games are handled. In the past, internal teams like Japan Studio made quirky, smaller titles. Today, Sony often partners with external indie teams or publishers smaller games rather than making them in-house. That's a change in who makes those games. Sony still supports these kinds of projects through PlayStation Plus, incubator programs, and third-party publishing. But the pipeline looks different. For fans who want in-house creative teams, the difference matters. Another change is Sony being more open to multi-platform releases. They moved away from strict exclusivity in some cases. That's a business decision. More platforms can mean more sales, but for fans who equate PlayStation with exclusive single-player masterpieces, just feels like a loss. So has PlayStation lost its way? Well, of course that depends on your perspective. If you judge by profits, market position, and the ability to fund a wide range of projects, Sony's found a path that works. If you judge by the identity longtime fans expect, steady in-house single-player output, and a consistent PlayStation character, then yes, things have changed and many fans are upset. My view sits in the middle. I don't think Sony is failing. I do think that they're changing direction. They're investing in live service and mobile more than before, trying to balance big single-player games with a new business model. Some moves will pay off, and of course some others will not. The industry is changing, games cost more and take longer to make, and big publishers are chasing recurring revenue models. PlayStation's strategy reflects that shift. What matters now is the result. Will the games be good? Will PlayStation keep supporting the types of games its fans care about? Will new investment in mobile and in live service bring value without killing the single-player identity many love? Those answers will come as new games releases, and as Sony announces more at the events like State of Play. So, I want to cut to the core. So, is PlayStation really losing its way? Michael Pachter's recent show raised the question that he made some sensible points and some of the mistakes. For example, that Fair Games is cancelled, Jade Raymond's status isn't exactly public. Obviously, there are a lot of things that are wrong here, so we can't assume what exactly has happened. Pachter argues that Sony stumbles after senior leaders left and by buying Bungie instead of a mobile company. They are worth debating. Leadership's exit can cause disruption, but departures alone don't prove that the company has failed or whatnot. The Bungie buy showed Sony wanted online expertise, but mobile companies offer different strengths. Scale and mobile-first live service experience that Sony just hasn't fully captured yet as well. Financially, PlayStation is strong, healthy operating income, solid PlayStation 5 sales, and high store revenue. And for the business, strategy just makes sense. For many fans, though, the brand feels different. In-house experimental teams are rare, first-party releases cadence is slower, and the multi-platform deals have become more and more common. That shift just is upsetting to long-time followers. And so, has PlayStation really lost its way? I don't believe so, not exactly. They're shifting direction to match the modern gaming market. Some changes will disappoint the fans, of course, that just makes sense. And others actually will pay off. The truth just will show if the games Sony releases and how well those games will land. But what do you think? And at that, tell me down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys all later.